Hello and welcome to lecture 11, and we almost there. Just a few lectures left. In this one, we're going to talk about alerts, those windows with the buttons you have to decide on, a little bit about localization, how to make your applications run in multiple different languages without rewriting code and stuff. And lastly, we're going to talk about custom views, how to create your own views that differ, that implement some other functionality. All right, so we start with project 3. Project 2 is done, and most of you did submit it, and I'm continuing to mark it, so you'll get your marks soon. Meanwhile, you have to start working on project 3. The goal of it, as you all know probably, is to continue working on your application, implement the actual code, the main part of it at least. It should be executable, and most of the functionality should be there. I should be able to run it to see how it works. And yes, not all the windows and not all the views might be complete, and you just say, well, this is still work in progress. But the core thing should be there. So if you're working on a game, just some running window with a logo is not enough. It should be playable. There should be something. There might be a lack of resources or sounds or maybe levels, but main thing should be there. So if I only see something like a window with few buttons and I don't know, few sounds and nothing really works, and you cannot really say this is the application in some alpha release, then you won't get any marks. So requirement, it should be executable, the core should be in there, and if this is an application for iOS, then just simulator is fine. So if you don't have an iPad or iPhone, this is fine. You should be just able to run it in a simulator. I'm gonna mark it how it behaves on a simulator, but of course I'll try to run it on my iOS devices. The deadline for this one is November 30, so it's the last day of November. 3 weeks, about 3 weeks left. So this is a serious deadline. That means I just won't accept anything after that. And project 4 is by the end of this term, so the last day of classes is project 4, and of course logically project 4 is your application completed and presented. So you should be able to run everything and write a short description or make a video or any type of presentation just to show what is your application about and why is it awesome. You basically have to convince me to buy it. All right, so alert panels, those are the windows you saw and seeing every day probably. Those are the windows that when you do something, they tell you like, this is fine, or this is an error, or are you sure to do this? And for some reason, this is one of those parts in Objective-C which is not really Objective-C. So in Cocoa, there is a function to show and to work with an alert panel, but it's a plain C function. So that function called NSRunAlertPanel, and it returns an integer, and it takes few strings, and those strings are used for the window. So you can see an example here. We are passing hello message, one button, another button, and OMG a button, and those three last values would be titles of the button, and hello would be the title of that window, not actually the window, but the message, and the message itself is the string message. So you can see the icon on the window there, and this is the icon of your application. You cannot have an application which is just an alert panel, so you have an alert panel working within an application, and that application has an icon, and in your project properties you can change that icon, and that is the icon that's going to be used in alert panel like this. So you can see it returns an NS integer, and that's just an integer, and this integer would be the actual choice that the user did. So you can ignore last two. If you don't want all three buttons, you can just have one button. That would be the default one, and it's the first button after the first two strings. So there goes the title, the message, and then the default button. And if you don't want anything to appear in this place, so if you don't want a message to be in place, then just replace that NS string with a nil, and it will be ignored. You can also have format specifier. So sometimes you want to put actual data, not just constant strings inside your message, and you want to get that data from your application. Then it will work kind of like an NSLog or just plain old printf, where you pass a format specifier and then you pass something like a variable. So in the same format, you can pass integers, strings, basically everything you can pass with NSLog. So it works like this, and we're going to see an example how that actually works in a real application. So I'm just going to fire up my Xcode, and I have it here. And as you can see, this is our old application that we're still working on. This is the employees database with the arrays and stuff like that. So you probably noticed when we remove people from this database, we actually do important stuff. We remove a person from a database where all the raises are stored. So probably it's a good idea to ask the user if he really wants to remove people. And it's also a good idea to make it possible to remove multiple people at a time. So first thing first, let's edit our table view. Not actually edit, but change one parameter. So I'm gonna go here, and if I click another time, I will get into my table view. And here in the utility panel, you can see the selection is not checked for multiple. That means I cannot check more than one entry, but I do want to check more than one entry. So I check this one, and now I will be able to check multiple lines in this table. So by default, we were using the built-in method of array controller that deletes the action. So we winded up this remove button with the method that was in place. But this time we want to write our own method because we want to take into account that fact that we can select multiple people. And also, before actually deleting them, we want to show the alert panel and to ask the user if he really is sure to remove those people. So let's go to our document.h and have a new method. So this method would be a method that removes employees, and that would be IMB action. Well, you're gonna see why it doesn't actually remove but returns the IB action, and we're gonna call it remove employee. Oops, employee. And it's just a simple IB action. So let's implement it now. And for some reason this file is not here, so I'm gonna move it right there. Let's go in the very end and try to implement this. So this is an IB action. Yeah, I kind of said nonsense there, and for some reason it's just an IB action method, so it doesn't return IB action. This is the method that winded up with the interface builder. So this is remove employee, and I hope you see this. I'm just gonna do it like this. So first I want to create an array of all the people that user has selected when he clicked this button. So we need to get everything that is selected. Let's create an NS array and call it selected people, and get the employee controller selected objects. Luckily we do have the employee controller, which is the array controller, but we kind of forgot some last time because we didn't use it to create an IB outlet. So let's go back to our H file and create a IB outlet for an SRA controller and call it employees controller. We use this array controller a lot, but we didn't need it to use it from the code because remember we did everything without the code, and we were able to only touch the interface builder and core data stuff. So this time we need to have this employee controller, so we're gonna do same old stuff. Make this IB outlet, then go to our document.zip, and now control click on file zoner, and now I have this outlet which is not connected to anything, and I have to actually connect it to that array controller. So if you don't see it, that's an array controller. So now we do have it, and let's go back to document.m. So how did I call it? Oh, I call it employees. Oh, it's fine. So employees controller, like so. Okay, so we can now create an alert, and that's an instance of NS alert. And of course, we're going to call it, without thinking too much, alert, and get a new one, NS alert. Alert with message text, so the second default thing. And the first one is, well, I want to ask the user. So I'm going to pass the NS string. Do you really want to delete those poor employees? Then the default button would be the text something like, yeah, I don't care. And the alternate button would be, no, I'm kind of just cancel. So, and a string for cancel. The other button is, well, I don't need any other button, so I'm gonna pass nil, as I said. And then informative text with format would be something that is used there as the message. So I want to say how many people will be deleted. So I'm gonna do something like I would do in NSLog. I would say, well, %LD, something that, because I want to pass the number of people, and then say, well, this many people will be deleted, something like this, and then pass that number. So I have this number because I set it here, employees, selected objects into this NS array, so I can just count the number of people, of items in that NS array. So I'm gonna say selected people dot count. Okay, so I hope I didn't make any mistakes there. This should be fine. So this is a big call, but it has a lot of stuff. So now I want to have this array as a sheet. So I don't want this to be a simple separate window. I want it to be kind of a part of my window, and you're gonna see when it's done how it looks like. So I want this alert to do begin sheet model for window, and I have to pass the window that it should appear on top of. So I'm gonna say table view, and take the window of that table view because it knows in what window that table view appears in. So the model delegate would be self, because this is where we want to reference. Did end with selector, and this is something that will be called when we're done, when the user is actually clicked something. So I'm gonna say selector and pass the name of selector. We didn't write yet, but we're gonna do it. It will be called alert ended colon code colon context colon. So of course, anytime you pass a selector or use the name of a selector, you should actually put the whole name with all the columns, and don't forget the last column. So anytime you have a selector, it ends with a colon. Okay, so here in the context info, we don't really need anything, so just pass null, and this should be it. So now we have this. We have a way of showing the alert, actually knowing how many people are selected by this time, and then asking some other method to do something when user clicked either button. So now we have to actually implement this. The method we pass the selector. So let's say void alert ended, and the first one should be NS alert. This is something that we get from that call. And code and context, the code would be NS integer. This is the result of a user clicking one of those buttons. And it will be called choice. And the context, oh, that's just nothing. So I'm gonna hide this so we can see more. If choice is equals to NS alert default return, so if the default button was clicked and the default button was yeah, I don't care, so the default button actually does delete it, then we can make it remove stuff that is selected. So I'm gonna call the employees controller remove, and we actually have stuff selected, so we don't care. We just say nil, and it will delete whatever is selected. And this should be fine, although there is some error. So let's see, expected semicolon. I forgot the semicolon here, of course. So, and I forgot the closing bracket somewhere. NS alert, yeah, like this. Unexpected identifier. So what did I do wrong? NS alert. This is probably better, but that shouldn't be the case. Code NS integer choice. Yeah, that was error. Okay, I didn't know that. So you should only put the star with the name of the type. Although when you create a type, something like NS alert, you can either put it here or you can put it here. This doesn't matter. Okay, so this should run now. The only thing that is left, as you can see by this empty circle here, is this action is not actually winded to the remove button. It's not winded to anything. So let's go back to our document zip to the stuff and go into the, make it like this, file owner, and we have this remove employee. So let's save, and there's some error. IRC semantic issue, no visible interface for NSRay controller. I don't know what is this. It should be able to resolve itself. Yeah, that's just some garbage. No, not a garbage. So what is there? Maybe I made a mistake when I was declaring this. So let's go and see an NSRay controller. Employees controller. Weird. I'm not sure. Yeah, the mistake was I said selected object, and that probably returns an ID, and we wanted to get all the objects and to put them into an array, and for that I should say selected objects. Okay, so I have those, and let's add a few more. So first, let's just try to remove it. It will ask, do you really want? And the default is, yeah, I don't care. If I hit cancel, it won't remove. If I actually hit yeah, I don't care, this one is removed, and we can select multiple. So I can hold command, and this will select any number, or I can select with shift. So click something and then shift, and it will select the whole range. So this should remove everything. So yeah, that works, and this is how you use alert panels And yeah, this alert panel is not a window. This is a sheet, and this is what I meant. It's just part of the window. You cannot get away from that. It's now just sticking there. Okay, see you in the next module.